Healthcare suffers from many problems. The number one being access, and the number two being cost. I was so incredibly burnt out by the process of being a clinician in the modern healthcare system. When I hit the reality of the healthcare system today, I realized it was just essentially putting out fires instead of really solving the root cause of the issues. As we're starting to recognize, being a founder is like being an athlete. Very long answer for the short TLDR, which is absolutely, you need to protect your health for the long term if you want to be a successful founder.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. We have a very special edition of our episode of the Startupr Founder Series. Today, I'm here with Hillary Lin, a Stanford-trained physician and now turned startup entrepreneur. Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you so much for having me here. I'm excited to join.
Of course. And this really brings us into something that's so important within startup culture, within burnout and people like not taking care of their health, longevity, everything that comes with that. It's amazing to have you here. And we have so many questions for you. So thank you so much.
And I'm excited in particular about this conversation because in the past, we used to view health and well-being as a nice to have. And as we're starting to recognize, being a founder is like being an athlete. And athletes are at the forefront of wellness and healthcare. So they are doing everything they can in their supposed rest time to take care of their health. And I think entrepreneurs, founders should do the same.
Absolutely. And when people invest, they usually invest in the founders themselves. So if you're not taking care of yourself, then when things degrade, who is to blame? All those things that come with it. Yes. Well, thank you. So let's just jump right in. When you made the shift from being Stanford-trained physician to startup founder, was there a personal aha moment? Like what led you to that decision?
To be honest, the shift wasn't immediate or sudden. It was this shift over time and a slow burn of frustration. And this is not going to sound incredibly new for especially other doctors, folks going through the medical system right now. But I was so incredibly burnt out by the process of being a clinician in the modern healthcare system. We all went in, or most of us went into it with a calling, like this noble intention to serve patients, make their lives better, improve health. And when I hit the reality of the healthcare system today, I realized it was just seeing the same exact individuals coming in with preventable conditions, symptoms where we were just essentially putting out fires instead of really solving the root cause of the issues. And all of my colleagues were equally burnt out, which made for a very unhappy work scenario. And it didn't feel like any one person's fault ever. It was just that the system and the incentives baked into it has resulted in such a terrible outcome that nobody is benefiting from at the end of the day. So that was the ground from which I leapt into entrepreneurship. Not that entrepreneurship is easy either, but at least you have the privilege of being able to dream in entrepreneurship. So that's really what drew me to becoming a startup founder. Not that there's, any more likelihood of success. We all know, like, the chances of anyone's startup's eventual broader success is rather low. But at the same time, there's at least the chance of a moonshot happening in a way that changes the world in a significant positive way.
Hey everyone, just a quick heads up. Today's episode is sponsored by Startupr, also known as us. We're in the process of building something super special for startups at this moment. And to fund the mission, we're providing high quality services like lead generation, design, and development. Please check out our website at startupr.xyz if you'd like more information, or drop a comment if you'd like to chat. Please like and subscribe to stay tuned to our channel for more information, more interviews like this. And as always, please enjoy the rest of the episode. Very, very good knowledge within there. With your actual company, CareCore, what gap in the market did you see for wellness creators? Like what drew you to building that platform?
Yeah, well, there's the more immediate gap and then there's the bigger gap. So to zoom out for a second, healthcare suffers from many problems. The number one being access and the number two being cost. And I'll just throw in a third one is, part of the access issue is lack of understanding what is a valid healthcare intervention. So let's just say access, cost, education / knowledge. And so what we're trying to do with CareCore is essentially close all those gaps with one sleek solution. So not a very tough problem, right? So to give you a little bit more context is I'm coming at CareCore and what we have built from my past experience as a physician working in the healthcare system, as a second-time founder, my first company being in the direct-to-consumer space, and the perspective, thirdly, of being a creator. Essentially, a creator is an educator. So all of those experiences have formed the reason why we started CareCore and the solution that we're building. So very briefly speaking, we're enabling primarily creators, but anybody to be able to offer healthcare access through their own channels to their own audiences without jumping through all of the hoops that is required typically to start your own clinic. So that's in a nutshell, the solution. And the reality of it is that it's very consumer friendly. It looks and feels like a consumer product or a consumer marketplace. And we did that purposefully. It's a little provocative. A lot of people are going to have opinions about healthcare being that easy to access, but we did it because we understand people don't love going to clinics today. Like, they don't love jumping through hoops. So we're removing all of those hoops.
Okay. No, that's amazing. I would imagine, as someone that also doesn't like going to clinics, that does sound amazing, especially within the American healthcare system. Big gap that you are filling. So having built, is it Curio? Is that the mental health? Okay.
Yeah. Curio was my former company in the mental health space.
Perfect. So having built that and then CareCore, what did you learn from your first startup that then brought you to building this one?
So Curio I founded in the pandemic because we were all facing a mental health crisis.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. And we did a lot of things around mental health, everything from educating folks the skill set to build resilience emotionally. Also access to a very new type of intervention, psychedelic assisted therapy, and all of the structure around that, guidance and integration, coaching, and so forth. And so what we did and managed to succeed in doing was we helped so many people in a very real way. That was incredibly rewarding. And if I take nothing else away from being a startup founder, I'm like, wow, we did something great there and created access for a very powerful intervention. What I learned about the hardships of starting a direct-to-consumer healthcare company is that you have to figure out how to work in a complicated economic system. What I mean by that is, traditional healthcare works with third-party payers, with insurance. Provocative idea, hot take is that I think that's going away for a variety of reasons. The world is going through more and more consumerized healthcare. But the problem is you still have to meet people where they are in terms of what they're willing to spend. Psychedelic assisted therapy, especially the way we were doing it, is a bit expensive. It's combining therapy, which is already seen as somewhat expensive for many people, with a highly regulated substance, which by nature of its regulatory package, you have to price in a lot of the complexity. So it wasn't cheap enough, essentially, is what I'm trying to say, for everyone everywhere to access the high quality product. And then I'm just going to also plug in if you do make it cheap enough, then you open up access perhaps to the wrong parties. So there's all these complicated details you have to think about when you are creating a healthcare solution. So long story short is I learned there's a very, very big market in consumer healthcare, but direct to consumer solutions and platforms have the tough job of figuring out creative business models to make the business work. And then to scale up in a startup way, like with that hyper growth fashion, that's an even greater challenge.
Yeah, no, I could imagine. And what have you taken from that to then influence your current model? Obviously, B2B or B to, healthcare provider influencer.
Yeah, the conclusion from that original lesson was we need to work with everybody in the ecosystem, and we are going to do that in a way that makes sense economically. One reason why we're working with creators is because they have a big need, which is how can they turn their content into a business? That's a big problem. Talk to any creator, and like 99% of creators have a big problem of monetization. Right now, they're turning to selling supplements, turning to selling wellness products, but there's problems with that. There's a ceiling, and also there's waste, frankly, because most people don't need just a bunch of wellness products. So we're opening up the door towards more revenue for that part of our market. And then for the consumer, the reality is I'm a doctor and I understand that consumers have less and less trust for traditional healthcare entities, including their doctors. And it's a little sad, but I understand why. And so rather than fight that, I'm trying to connect the end consumer with the entities they do trust, who are a lot of times creators that they love, brands that they love. And in doing so, I'm aware of a big risk, of course. You don't want to subject people to unfounded claims, pseudoscience, and so forth. And so what we do is we build in guardrails in the entire process. We have a highly curated marketplace. Only approved items are there, things that have some scientific validity, and many things don't have scientific validity and perhaps even harm. So we guardrail that way, but we also have baked in using a sophisticated mix of like traditional software and AI, a way to basically offer personalized recommendations and guardrails around your particular needs as a consumer. And then the final entity that we're pulling in are vendors, people who have something to offer, whether it's a product or a service to the end consumer. And their problem is distribution, of course. It's getting harder and harder in today's world to buy acquisition. Because the cost of advertising has gone up. Advertising itself doesn't work as well for a lot of reasons. We're blocking all of our ads, and Meta and Google is cannibalizing their own ad revenue with AI, and Meta is it's only one place, and that's also shrinking in itself. So all of the more traditional advertising channels are getting both less effective and more expensive, and so everyone's turning towards creators, and we want to do it in a very turnkey way for all of those three parties that we work with.
Okay. No, all of that sounds amazing. Wow. Especially the curated. I think that's super important within this day and age of social media. Everyone can get on there and say something, but as long as it's backed by doctors, that makes it a lot more interesting to me.
Yeah.
Taking a little bit of a shift here in general, now that you've also worked within entrepreneurship for a little bit in general. So hustle culture is really big within startup culture. Is hustle culture killing founders? Can we really achieve these big goals without wrecking our mental health? Or is burnout really just the cost of success?
Yeah, I think you and I both know that it's a marathon, not a sprint. And I have seen some investors, by the way, who are not founders in most of the time, say like, oh, we only want to invest in founders who are willing to basically kill themselves for their company. And
yes.
And they think that that's the only way to get to billion-dollar success. And in actuality, that's absolutely not true. The most successful founders, yes, you're going to go through some times where you need to fix things through the night, but nobody can work for 20 hours a day forever. And that's just the reality. The most successful founders, they have sprints sometimes, but the rest of their time, they're being extremely methodical about taking care of their body, their brains, and their overall health, because that's what's going to keep the engine going for longer. And as we're seeing, as startups from a prior era have matured, the most successful startups are those that are founder run for the long term. When you replace the CEO, for example, it completely changes the company. It's a totally different company. And it may succeed in a different form, but I think most people would agree that founder-led companies have a very different, rare kind of success for the long term compared to those that are run by corporate, essentially, in the long term. I'm not saying that everybody needs to spend 12 hours a day on their fitness and wellness. That is just impractical. Like, you can't do that and also work at anything. But it does mean that, the basics are necessary. You need to get proper quality sleep. You need to, not destroy yourself with a bad diet and toxins and so forth. And you need to have community. You need to have friends. You need to have emotional support that you can rely upon through the hardest times. Without that, then you're going to see folks who essentially run on fire. And I'm pointing at some examples like FTX or like WeWork type examples where it looks so attractive in the beginning because you have a founder who is extremely charismatic. You're burning through the day. You're staying up at all hours. You're taking medications to do so, like folks who are on stimulants and then on depressants to just basically push through that. It looks so attractive for the short term, but it doesn't last for the long term, which is what you need to build lifelong generational type companies. Very long answer for the short TLDR, which is absolutely you need to protect your health for the long term if you want to be a successful founder.
Well, I just want to clip that portion and then send it to every boss I've ever had. I love it. I think that all founders should hear that because, yes, exactly. Sprints are important, but I think that, consistently when your whole life is a sprint, there's no way that that's going to work out long term.
Yeah.
So within burnout, what are the early warning signs? How can we avoid it?
Well, the number one thing is you have to know yourself. When I was at Stanford, and Stanford is notoriously a group of students who are not in touch with their emotions. That's just, we had the Stanford duck syndrome, like everybody looks all smooth on the top, and then we're all paddling underneath. And it's folks who have been focused on academia their entire childhoods. So I remember there was this initiative to try to get people to pay more attention to their emotions. And then they would hand out these papers across the dorms being like, these are names of emotions, of feelings, circle the ones you felt. And literally, people would laugh because they would circle 5 feelings. They would be like, oh, I felt happy. I have felt sad. I have felt angry. It's like people don't, intrinsically, a lot of us don't have the language even to place on nuanced feelings. And so I think number one is you have to get to know what a certain feeling even means for you. And just to use myself as an example, but I'm sure a lot of people could resonate, is sometimes these fleeting feelings, they're not because of any emotional or, major crisis going on in your life. It is because you had a bad night of sleep, or maybe it's too hot. Like you might have heard, I forget the name of the person, but there was someone who went through prison and wrote a book about it and said they got to know their emotions really well and how tied it was to immediate events. Like if they were angry or upset, it was usually because, they hadn't been fed recently. They hadn't slept well. There was some sort of physical discomfort going on, so on and so forth. And I actually think, having worked on a mental health startup before, I think there was almost too much emphasis put on the emotional piece of mental health. And we've pulled back too much from the fact that our physical being, our biology, the physiology of your being is the number one reason why you feel any which way. It's not actually any particular event that occurs to you, although dealing with traumas is still important.
Of course. Okay. Well, no, that makes a lot of sense. Usually it is true. It's like people don't take that exactly what happened to me this day, and that's the reason that I'm feeling this way, versus everything's kind of crushing and coming down.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, great. So within your life, how do you fit into the essentials? Eating well, sleeping well, and then movement within your daily life. You're running a company. Tell us how.
Yeah. So you named all the big ones, and I'll just throw in the community/belonging, like having social support too. And again, this goes back to knowing yourself. So for me, my most fragile thing is sleep. And this is very genetic. Tons of people in my family have insomnia. and are very sensitive to disruption. So that I've known since I was a college student. I was lucky enough to take Dr. Dement's class. He's known as the father of sleep medicine. And he was so fun. Like he would actually, there was a saying called like drowsiness is red alert. And he had like t-shirts made, etc. And he taught us all that sleep is incredibly important in a time where before this was all sexy. This is way before Matthew Walker. And so long story short is I have known for a long time that my sleep is the most fragile thing. And therefore I have literally designed my life around my sleep. I chose my career partially because of it. And I structure my founder mentality and my schedule all around my sleep. So why do I not work in a hospital? Of course, there's a lot of problems with, all of that. But one of the major reasons is because to work in a hospital, you have to get up to be there at 7 a.m. And I'm just like, I am an owl. That's my natural circadian rhythm. I am an owl, and it's not going to work. and you have to make the decision for yourself. Like, what is the life you want to live? This is a long-term decision when you're going to a career. And so that isn't going to work for me. And so for me, it's important that I'm able to choose my own schedule. Long story short, it's important for me to be able to stay up late if I need to, and to, start meetings, not at 8 a.m. And so all of those things are structured because I know my sleep is important. It's very fragile, and it's like the core of my everyday experience. Food-wise, I have solved, honestly, by paying for it. There's ways to do this cheaper. And for me, honestly, it was a compromise of I just didn't have the time. It's not my talent to cook. And it was just easier to pay for a meal service that's customized. I work with actually, he was a former personal chef of Tom Brady, and he started a company, a meal prep company. So shout out to Alan Campbell. He's fantastic. It's not that cheap, but it has enabled me to completely ignore grocery shopping and cooking. And someone literally takes care of it at a very precision level for me and helps with even the sourcing of the food down to like no use of like plastic containers for the food. Like all those details, I don't have to think about anymore because I've outsourced it essentially. For exercise, I also had to make it easy for myself. I'm not somebody who loves exercise. Lucky for people who do. But for me, I'm standing on a treadmill right now. So I always have a walking treadmill at my standing desk. I never sit at my workstation, actually. And I go to the gym. I try to go 5 to 7 times a week. And I don't make it a whole deal. I know some people, they're going to get obsessed about exact protocols to like maximize their VO2 max or whatever it is. And I just stick by the core principles of, you want to, like, what are my goals? My goals are brain health and longevity. And for that, it means I'm doing some sort of cardio running sort of thing that helps me with my autonomic system, helps a little bit with the VO2 max. There's a whole debate about it, which I'm not going to get into, but it helps with my cardiovascular system as well. It helps with my brain. And I also work out with resistance training, but I primarily focus on the big muscle groups because, it helps with your strength. It helps with energy. It helps with all of the other things. I try a little bit here and there to work on agility, but that's like, I'll fully admit that that's probably, it's fallen to the wayside a bit. And then for community, it's important to know like what's important for you. Like I'm actually naturally an extrovert, and if I had nothing else to do, I would probably just hang out with friends all the time. But I also am very lucky to have a partner who I spend 90% of my life with these days. We both work from home, and that actually fulfills me. And we frankly haven't been as social lately because we've been so focused on work, and we help one another essentially on the emotional community belonging piece. That doesn't mean I'm not talking to my friends. It's just that I'm leaning more towards the person who needs to set boundaries rather than the person who needs to reach out more, if that makes sense. So that's like one of those items that you have to decide for yourself personally.
There is so much good stuff there. Thank you for being so honest as well. I'm definitely a night owl too. So anything at 7 a.m., it's just not going to work for me in terms of my brain.
Happening.
But at 1 a.m., we could run it.
Exactly.
Absolutely. So for a founder that says they have no time, what do you say to them? How do they fix it?
Yeah. Work smarter, not longer. all the time. I am a productivity addict as well as anybody else. Any type A person who is ambitious and high achieving is always tempted to work longer. But, anybody who has been doing this for a long time realizes not every day is the same. Not every hour is the same. And so if you are overly focused on the number of hours you're working, you're probably missing the big picture somewhere. You do need to put in hours. I'm not saying that, anybody gets anything done if you just work like 5 hours a day or something, but it's more about how, you need to reflect and zoom out and think about what you're doing before you just try and crush it through pure hour, marathon working. There's always enough time unless you have a lot of external responsibilities. So I'm not going to speak for people who have kids, people who have who are caregivers for family members or have other similar types of responsibilities. If you yourself are dealing with a disability or a medical condition that takes up a lot of your time, those people, I'm like, all of those above, I'm like, yes, you probably don't have enough time, and you have to be realistic about what you're able to do as a founder. So, that I'm going to set that group aside because is very special. You have to figure it out on your own individually. But for folks who are, lucky to be mostly in control of what they do day to day, you have to essentially consider your health and your exercise, etc., as part of your work. And again, I always have to caveat, I'm not recommending people spend all day at coffee shops or even at co-working places where they're essentially just hanging out with friends, not really working. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about you need to make sure you get the adequate amount of exercise. You're eating well, you are sleeping well, and then you will work very efficiently. Your brain's going to be a lot better. You're going to just start recognizing your brain is going to be more imaginative, more creative, and it will spot things a lot faster than if you were just slogging through it day to day.
I completely agree. That's great that the science backs that up as well. Whenever I'm working on something or I'm too burnt out, I just tend to point and shoot. They're like, go get this done. And then you go get it done. Reflecting and then trying to figure out, is this the right way, seems to be the best. The best option.
Yeah. And you want to be the best teammate you can be as well. Like if you're working with other people, everybody knows that a grumpy, underslept manager or boss is the worst person to deal with. So
absolutely. Well, then that's a perfect segue. You talked about sleep so much, but I want to talk about it a little more. What does the science say about how important it is if you're not getting enough? What is the right number? Kind of give us a little bit on that.
Yeah. Everybody always asks us about the right number of hours, and I'm here to say it's complicated. It's highly individual, and the reason is because each of us has different sleep efficiency. So your body is self-regulating naturally, and anybody who tracks their sleep, I track with an Apple Watch, you will see this happen. Some days you're going to sleep fewer hours, but just take a look at the rest stages. So that's your deep sleep and your REM sleep. You may notice, as I have for myself, that even if your overall number of hours is shorter, your brain will literally emphasize or prioritize deep sleep and REM sleep. If it's not, it's probably because something happened that day, like extra stressful, or you just did a heavy duty sauna session. Some good things are bad short term, and alcohol will definitely destroy your sleep and that kind of a thing. So it's not about the number of hours that you are unconscious, basically. It's more about the quality, the efficiency of those true rest stages of your sleep. So don't worry too much. If you're around 7 hours and you're the average human being, chances are you're fine. There's some people who can do very well with 5 hours of sleep. You're probably not one of them if you're listening. It's like 99% of people are not that person, and I'm not that person. So yeah. And some people need longer sleep. Like my partner and I struggle with lining up because we love hanging out like late into night together. So we want to stay up together. But then in the morning, we love getting up together. So it's hard because we simply have different sleep schedules and needs. Like I need a little bit under 7 hours. If I get a little bit like close to 7 hours, 6.5 hours, something like that every day, and it's good quality sleep, I will be happy camper. But my partner, He just needs about an hour to an hour and a half more consistently. And that's just the way life is. Like if he's tried many times to like cut it down, and he's just like horrible for the rest of the day. So I just want to like, just stop trying, like accept the fact that you need 8 hours.
I love it.
So,
I identify with that. I really do. I need my 8 hours as well.
Yeah. So everybody's different is the long story short. Around that 7-hour mark ish is about average, 7 to 8 hours. If you're somebody who is sleeping longer, just not, first of all, sleeping 10 hours a night. I heard someone tell me this. She's like, oh, I think I'm so healthy because I sleep 10 hours a night. And I'm like, maybe you are, but I don't think that's actually the case for everyone, because most of the time people sleep longer because there's something terribly wrong, actually. You're probably sick, like there's a chronic illness, or if you study your sleep like stages, you might not be spending enough time in those true rest stages. So I'm not going to say a blanket statement about anybody, but just if you are somebody who's like, oh, it's weird, like I sleep 12 hours a night, make sure that you aren't suffering from like a mental health thing, like depression, or like a physical like problem, like a sleep apnea, or anything. There's a lot of things that could contribute to too long sleep, essentially.
Yeah. Okay. And I think that makes sense based on everything else within health, right? It's like if you're working out, if you're overly working out, probably the same aspect. If you're eating extremely clean, like just that won't fix all of your problems.
Oh yeah.
Across the board,
yeah.
Right?
There's definitely an 80-20 rule for healthcare. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So you talk about sleep being so important to you. Other than not getting up as early, knowing and understanding your circadian rhythm that you're speaking about, what are other like tricks that you utilize? Like, what are your strategies?
Yeah. So I am low carb by, choice. And part of it is because people can get super, super obsessive about their diets. But I would say there's like a few rules that you can generally follow. And then everything else, like everything else in health, is very individualized. So like this is just one framework. You don't have to use it, but just so you know, I basically took a look at myself, my goals, my needs, and my size and everything. And these are my macros. Like I start with my macros. And then I also have a caloric limit that I'm aiming for. And I also give myself a healthy buffer because I like chocolate,
Of course.
Yeah.
Can't always hit it.
I need my 300 to 500 calories worth of buffer because I'm just going to, I don't know, I'm going to eat fruit, I'm going to eat chocolate. And those aren't even super unhealthy, but you have the buffer. So then within like say for me, I have like 1,200 calories to play around with because XYZ. Then I know like, okay, I prioritize two main things first. One is protein intake, and the second thing is fiber intake. And the reasons are very personal. Like for me, the fiber is because, healthy gut, healthy mind, healthy everything. And it also comes with it because I'm getting it through food. I get all the micronutrients that come with vegetables and so forth. So I'm aiming for that 30 grams a day, by the way, in case anyone cares. But like, everyone's going to be different again. And then for the protein, I am somebody who wants to stay fit, but I'm not like heavily muscly, like building. So I'm aiming for that around like 0.7 to 1 grams per pound, like mark, but I'm not going crazy. Like some people are going higher than that or whatever. I'm just staying around there, and I'm very clean about my protein intake, meaning like it's mostly coming from food, mostly coming from either poultry or fish, and sometimes beef and pork. I try to avoid. I love pigs. That's just personal. So like,
naturally,
like plant-based things, of course, too, where it's possible. And then everything else I leave to carbs. Like it's just like so. And then by nature of that, if you do the math, it means I end up with a low carb diet. It's not because I'm intentionally keto or low carb for any reason. I don't have as big of a problem with my metabolic health. Like I've done CGM like intervals just to see, and it's not a huge issue for me. It's just naturally what happened after I calculated everything else out.
Okay. All of that is food related. So mainly food strategies. Are there other ones that are Like putting the screens away 2 hours early. I've heard that a lot.
I honestly don't. I don't.
Okay.
And this is
Totally
personal
fair.
again. Yeah, and it's personal again. It's very helpful for a lot of people, but it's just you have to know what bothers your sleep. So I've tested all of the above. Like, does eating farther away from my sleep time work? Does putting screens away work? Does doing saunas at X number of hours before or whatever work? For me, I'm incredibly not sensitive to the screens or the food. And that's a me thing. I'm very sensitive to alcohol, so I don't drink alcohol. And I think I mentioned the thing about the contrast temperature sauna thing. Like, yes, it'll definitely disrupt my sleep, but it's a temporary problem. So that what I'm trying to get at is there's not a set protocol for people to follow, and you shouldn't necessarily take what I do for what you do, because it's going to be heavily dependent on your personal receptivity, your sensitivities to different behaviors. All that I would say is experiment with different practices and see, really track the data and see what it's doing to your sleep quality, to your mood. And then maybe I'll give you 2 blanket statements.
Okay, cool. Good.
One is just do 10% more with everything. And the reason I say that is people have this tendency to go 0 to 100 when it comes to their health. They're like, I have to be perfect about my diet and my exercise. I have to do 3 days resistance training, 2 days VO2 max training, and then 1 day of zone 2 climbing with a backpack. And I'm like, yeah, whatever. If you literally just try 10% more, you're going to be able to stick to it longer. You will eventually get better and better because you're always going to do 10% more, and it's just a little bit. So that's number one. The second blanket statement that I'll say is major on the majors, don't major in the minors. And what I mean is, it's so tempting. Everybody out there is constantly asking questions about supplements, about how many hours before I sleep am I supposed to have my last bite, and the exact number of vegetables I'm supposed to eat. What for women out there, people are obsessed nowadays around their cycle and timing, everything. And the reality is these things are going to make a fraction of a percent of a difference on your health and longevity. The majors are things understanding your sleep, your exercise, your community belonging, your food, those big pillars, and doing those well. So getting from the C-, which is the average American, performance on all those big pillars, and getting at least an A-. I'm not even asking for an A or an A+. That's a full-time job. Try to get to an A-, and you will live to a healthy 100 years, assuming nothing accident, cancer, happens to you out of the blue. So.
Okay. Well, no, all of that is amazing because it's very contrarian as well. Not contrarian, but not as popular.
I know,
society.
because people just want a pill. People just want
they want the quick fix. That's what we live in. Yeah. And it's good that you're also mentioning so much about within diet and things of that nature. It seems like everyone else has those, put your screens away and other things like that. And then 10% more is the best. Yeah. Absolutely. Well, amazing. So next, continuing on, a lot of founders, and we kind of talked about this a little bit, touched on it, but a lot of founders feel guilty for resting or guilty for, taking time off. What do you say to them, and how does that affect you?
Yeah, I think it's a mistake to not occasionally give you time to relax and recover. It's just I keep going back to the athlete example, and all athletes need to have recovery built into their training programs. This is just a necessary part of being an athlete, and you see it because they're timing fractions of seconds and things like that, and they'll get tilted by even the mental mishaps. So there's sports psychologists. So it's this entire package, and it includes deeply that psychological support piece, not just psychological, but physiologic support and recovery. So I think it's a mistake to ignore it. And the second part of that is it's telling you something. If you're feeling tired, burnt out, or you feel like you hate everybody, or whatever, you're feeling bad, that's a signal of something. It might be your work. So analyze that. Maybe you're doing something that doesn't make you feel right. Your company isn't going the direction you want to. You don't have the right co-founder, whatever it is, that might be what's going on. But on the other hand, it might be your body just telling you something, like you have a chronic illness or you don't sleep enough and it's wearing on you over time. So there's usually a reason why your body doesn't feel right. It's not just out of nowhere. And it's important to understand your body well enough to tell, is this a small problem or a big problem?
And so within that active listening, you talk about how you wear an Apple Watch. Is there other metrics that you look, or are there specific metrics that you look at? Do you wear anything else? How do you go about understanding, diagnosing what's going on?
I've tried a little bit of everything, and I'm kind of this pragmatist, and I'm not a minimalist, and I'm not a biohacker. Well, in the traditional sense of the word.
That sounds normal to me personally. Yeah. Good.
Just your average human,
Yes.
So I wear the Apple Watch, but I don't even wear it all the time. I'm not wearing it right now. And I wear it primarily to track my sleep because I care a lot about it. And I also wear it when I remember to the gym, so I get credit.
Right. Absolutely. That's where you need it.
Yeah, exactly. And then I track my menstrual cycles. And I just observe my HRV. Folks who are more training for something like whatever physical activity, you can use your HRV for recovery metrics and so forth. For me, because I'll be honest, I'm not probably pushing myself physically as much as I could be. I'm not really suffering, but it's been very nice to see. Like, I just zoomed out today and saw that my HRV has just been steadily climbing. So which is amazing. Like,
that's the goal. Yeah. That's amazing. Yeah. And the 10% more. That sounds like that.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, oh yeah, cool. So, and that's the key, is that you're, by the way, for people who don't already know this, comparing objective HRV numbers between two people, not very effective. It doesn't mean very much. If you're exceptionally low, like your HRV is in the teens or lower, then there's probably something terribly wrong, and you should get a full checkup. But within the normal ranges, it's more about comparing against your own self and seeing how it trends over time. So,
okay. And that sounds that seems like a theme as well. Yeah. Like your personalization of your healthcare, mental, physical, everything about it.
Yeah. It's harder for people. Everyone always wants the rule book. Like, that's
right.
Yeah. Everyone wants like a religion out of their healthcare is what it is. They want rituals. They want rules. They want to be told that they're a good dog or a bad dog.
Essentially. Yeah. And then the immediate flip. Yeah. When essentially it's just you versus you, and everyone is different.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Now I'm really interested to see where this one goes. You talked about supplements in that way. What do you take? Like, what should founders take? Do you take them? What is it? Yeah.
Most supplements, as maybe a lot of people understand, most supplements are expensive urine. So,
yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So at the very best, they're not hurting you. They're just passing straight through you. But I do believe in targeted supplementation. And what I mean is, I'm actually not a fan of multivitamins. I know there's lots of doctors even who will recommend them, but I don't like them. And the reason is, it assumes that everyone is suffering from the same deficiencies, which is simply not true.
Interesting.
You're going to hear influencers out there who are like really into certain things. And I'm not saying that magnesium isn't good, but for example, yes, we have maybe some depletion of magnesium from our soil. And if you exercise a lot, you are probably a little bit more deficient than the next person about it. But all of these things are testable. Test your reserve. So you can get blood tests, make sure you get the right blood test, because there are different types of like vitamin D blood tests that you can get, different types of magnesium blood tests you can get, and so on. And omega-3 you can measure as well, so on and so forth. There's so many tests that you could get. And then target your supplementation accordingly. So for me, I am actually currently, like today, not taking a single supplement. And that's because I'm on a supplement holiday. It's not because like
I've never heard that. I love
it.
Yeah.
It's there's a longer story behind it. It's like the short version, the TLDR is, I had COVID. I get post-COVID all the time with COVID. It's a very bad month for me after COVID. And like during that month, like I usually go crazy with the supplements, because for anyone who has suffered,
get it all out.
Yeah, you're just like, I just want to fix myself in any which way. So, but then after that, like I started feeling better. I'm like, you know what? I need to like cleanse, essentially, take off all the supplements. And so I'm currently in that period.
Okay.
And
But you get a lot from your meals, like from those very specific meals that you're buying.
Yeah. And there are certain things that I know I will always be slightly deficient of because of my lifestyle, frankly. One of which is vitamin D. I don't go outside. It's a problem. And I live in New York City.
Yes, I'm shocked. I know.
Yeah. And, you know, the sun causes skin damage too. So it's like a tricky thing to manage. And so I take vitamin D, and in the process too, I take K2 because, you know, you want your calcium to go to the bones, that kind of a thing.
Yeah.
But, you know, people tend to overdo it. Like I've had people come to me, they take like 10,000 IUs a day. And then, you know, I literally had a patient who ended up in the cardiac ICU. They were my patient in the ICU, to be clear. Like I hadn't.
Yeah. you didn't send them there. Yeah. Good.
So you be very careful about how much you're doing and test to make sure. So to use me as an example, I was like, oh yeah, I'm going to start with 5,000 IUs because I was so deficient. I was in like, I don't know, the teens or something. And then I rapidly got up to 60s. Like, that's where I'm sitting now. And now I'm like, okay, I got to cut down. So because, you know, 60s is definitely into the optimal range, but it might be like a touch higher than you need to be. And you never want to overdo, especially fat soluble vitamins.
Yeah.
And so I'm probably going to go back on it later at around like 1,000 to 2,000 IUs a day. Omega-3s, I also kind of went extreme, to be honest, because the longer story is I have a very, very strong family history of heart disease. I have early, you know, atherosclerosis myself. I'm on all the proper medications for that. But omega-3s are an additive, you know, helpful anti-inflammatory and so forth. And so I was doing like 3 grams-ish a day, 4 grams even.
Yeah,
and
that's a lot.
It's more than most people probably need. And so in my recent test, it was rather high. And I was like, okay, I think I'm going to, so I'm pausing right now, but when I restart, I'm probably going to get closer to the 1 to 2, which is what most people need. So the summary is when I am taking supplements, it's usually vitamin D and K, omega-3, fatty acids. I'll take magnesium here and there, like more if I'm sweating a lot. And I play around with creatine somewhat. So it's a hit or miss one for me. So
all right, interesting. A lot of that is interesting because I know that like vitamin D, 10,000 is sometimes the dosage that it comes in, which is kind of crazy.
Oh my God, don't do it.
Yeah, I know.
If anyone's listening, don't do 10,000. That's way too much for anybody.
Yeah. Well, what's funny is that you say you don't biohack, but all of those sounded very biohacky.
I know.
Go get a blood test and then take all of your I you know, to me that's biohacking, but who knows?
I accept it.
So, well, as a doctor, I would hope at least in some sense we're using science here, so it's okay. It's okay. We're talking about vices and sin here. A lot of people drink, you know, energy drinks, a lot of caffeine. What is your opinion on that? What do you take? What is kind of just like the natural, more healthy solution? And all of that?
So this is a tricky topic, and I'm more of a minimalist on this front, is the truth. And I think this is because I focus so much on my sleep. I don't have a problem with energy. Like I feel energetic most of the time. Like I get people coming to me all the time. They're like, oh, I'm on NAD plus precursors now. Like it helps me with my energy. I'm like, and then here I am. I'm like sitting around being like, what is the problem with energy? Like, so I understand that I subjectively just don't have the same experience as some people who feel like over time they've lost day-to-day energy. So I can't speak from that perspective. I'm also extremely sensitive to caffeine. So I have 1 cup of coffee a day. It's usually, I'm not like extremely, I don't have to stop at noon. I could have a cup of coffee till like 5 p.m. even, and it's fine. But I don't typically do more than 1 because it does, it might take it all at once. Let's just say if I do a double espresso, I'm like the Energizer Bunny. It's hilarious. Yeah. So it's just too much and it makes me wired. I can't even focus because it's too much.
Not a good feeling.
Yeah. And then it's the complete opposite for my partner, who he can have a coffee late at night. He does double espressos after dinner, like when we're out, that kind of a thing. And then he'll just be
One of
asleep.
those.
Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. And you can actually find out these things genetically. Like we've both had genomic, whole genome sequencing. You can
cool.
see these things. It's one of those things that's been well studied. I am more sensitive to caffeine. He's absolutely not. So, and then for other like nootropics and such, I actually don't like really take any of them. I know there's like some evidence behind some of them and not for others.
Yeah.
I vaguely understand that, but at the end of the day, I just don't know if anything offers as much benefit as simply sleeping extremely well and exercising when you need to and managing your stress levels. So caffeine, if you're not overly sensitive to it, is a well-proven nootropic. It helps you. Some people go as far as taking like nicotine, which definitely will activate you. But I just think the dangers of addictions are too great. So I don't recommend that. And all the other energy drink ingredients are kind of excessive. A lot of them have a ton of sugar.
Yeah.
And like 200 to 300 milligrams of sugar. And then you end up crashing afterwards. And then there's all sorts of unproven supplements added into them. Maybe some folks who read more, like taurine has been exposed now. It's not as helpful as we previously thought. And so what I'm saying is I'm not a fan of energy drinks. It's kind of like a extreme version of the multivitamin where it's a dirty supplement where there's just, we say dirty drug in medicine when one drug hits too many receptors and you can't control it in a precise way. Sometimes it's okay. Like metformin's a dirty drug, ketamine's a dirty drug. These are all drugs that are very useful. We still use them, and you just have to understand what receptors they'll hit. But when it comes to something like an energy drink that you're just trying to use for performance, I don't think it's worth the risk of all of the side effects of everything.
Okay. Yeah. No, I expected that to be the answer, so that's good. Wouldn't expect a doctor to be like, "Oh, go drink all of your Red Bull."
Like
yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Okay. And then moving on to exercise. How important is consistent exercise for a founder? You've talked in previous interviews about zone 2 and how important that is. Kind of just give me that general overview.
Yeah. I'm going to sound like a broken record, but essentially it depends on where you are coming from. So if you are already somebody who is incredibly active and you want to get the next edge, then push yourself. Like, more high intensity, add that 10% and go for it. If you are a, previously all sedentary kind of a person, just get up, like just get a standing desk. That's your 10%. It's not like going to the gym and training for a marathon necessarily. So I always tell people, start where you are and then go 10% from there and then continue to go 10% every so often. So you're referring to, I had an extremely viral YouTube video, which went crazy. And it was because I was saying like, we're emphasizing like, HIIT exercises where, zone 2 may or may not be like more efficient in terms of longevity. I'm not saying I don't like HIIT. I actually, if you ask me what I do, I mostly do HIIT actually. And it's because I'm there. Like I already get my zone 1 and my zone 2. And now I'm trying to get the HIIT because I need the efficient intensity, which helps with increasing your BDNF levels and improves your cognitive function for, it's proven for hours and hours afterwards. So that's where I am coming from. But actually, I meet most people and they're basically sedentary. Like the majority of America is basically sedentary, sitting in a car or at their desk most of the day. If you're that person, literally the most efficient thing for your longevity is even not zone 2, zone 1. And so just moving, period, is going to help you, like give you the biggest 80% of like the gain in your longevity. And then once you've got that down, you're moving around a lot of the day, then you can think about, okay, I got to get in my zone 2, which is extremely powerful. Zone 2, by the way, is the basis. I'm not going to go into the physiologic mechanics behind it because that'll be a long conversation. But the idea behind zone 2 is you're at that threshold between like pushing yourself but also endurance. And so you're pushing yourself, you're telling your body how to metabolize fats, etc. And you can endure it for a very long period of time, like an hour and a half, and so forth. So that's the magic of zone 2 and why it's so great for you and your longevity. But it's definitely not the end all be all. It's just one tool in a big toolbox of exercise.
Right. Okay, cool. So sedentary people, in general, getting up, having a standing desk seems to be kind of like where you're at with that. And then just taking a daily walk, like how often are we supposed to do that? Kind of
as much as you can.
Okay.
The natural human behavior is to be getting up, sitting down constantly, walking around constantly. And so, if you don't do that, which unfortunately most Americans do not, then you have to compensate somehow. But natural human behavior for your heart, for your circulation, we don't talk about circulation enough, is to be constantly moving. So.
Okay, cool. And so talking about maybe not the last most important part, but stress. Working at a startup is a roller coaster, consistently fires, always putting them out. What do you do to manage stress, and kind of how do you keep yourself even keel?
Yeah. I think you have to know yourself. Knowing myself, I meditate each morning. I'm a terrible meditator, but I do it anyways. And it's a practice. And I also exercise, like I mentioned, 5 to 7 days. And when I say 7 days, someone out there is going to hear that and be like, "You're over exercising." I'm like, "No, trust me, I'm not."
Important just to get there and put in the time.
Exactly. I'm doing it because I recognize I'm not as active, just in my day to day. I'm a desk job worker essentially. So, it's my movement. And I also maintain boundaries exactly the way that I need. So, like I mentioned, I'm very extroverted, but I also get frazzled, and distracted if there's too much going on. And so I have become stricter over the years with, who I'm giving time to. I live in New York City. I'm in the most central part of New York City, of Manhattan possible. So people are always like, "Oh, let's grab a coffee or whatever." And I have learned, even though it feels very rude, I tell people essentially, I'm like, "No, I can't, because otherwise I'm just going to be running around doing coffees all day long." I default to Zoom calls in only specific times of the day and specific times of the week. And that gives me sanity around my schedule. And humans are creatures of routine. You need to know when to expect certain activities. It can't just be constant novelty in terms of your schedule. And so those are the boundaries I've set for myself. And it's because I like that for my boundaries. And some of those other things I've already talked about before, those help me keep my sanity. The whole emphasis and craziness around my sleep obsession is because that helps me maintain my mental health. And all of my social activities, or lack thereof, is also around maintaining stress levels and mental health.
Yeah, it seems like a common theme is if over time you've listened to your body and being able to decide when it's right to do something, when it's not. And also, if you're sensitive to coffee, trying to get coffees all the time with friends sounds like one of the worst options. But
exactly.
Okay, great. So in general, going to go back to almost like a little bit of the supplements, or kind of just the little bit of the biohacking. If you were to give a super simple, just what we should be taking as founders for a health stack, just what would that be?
Oof. Nothing without testing. And
I'm sorry. I might have given you a terrible question for yourself, but it's okay. You could also say I wouldn't, so that's fine.
Without testing, I think that's a hard one to answer. Fiber. Take fiber. And if you want to, take a probiotic. And I say want to because probiotics are rather expensive for what they are. I take one, but I forgot to mention, I do take a probiotic, but I don't think it's necessary. Do you know what's better than a probiotic is having fiber, which is the prebiotic for all those good, healthy gut things. And so fiber is safe and easy for everybody to take. You don't have to do any testing to do fiber. Other than that, you have to be very careful with fat-soluble vitamins and supplements. And that includes my three favorite ones, which are vitamin D, vitamin K, and omega-3s. You can tell because they're all oily that they're fat soluble. The reason is fat soluble substances stay in your fat for the long term. And so it's not going to like just dissipate. If you want to play around with B vitamins or with magnesium, it's very short term. You're going to urinate it out. So I don't mind as much if people just want to experiment with it because your body's going to excrete it very quickly. So I don't know if that's a helpful framework, perhaps, to think about.
No, it's good. It's good.
Yeah.
It's actually nice. Once again, not contrarian, but not the the
not
typical.
your usual thing.
It's good to have someone be like maybe less. When everyone's trying to sell a bunch. Yeah. 10% more, sometimes less is more.
Totally.
So that's good. So in general, how would you say that if you were talking to founders straight, how would you get them to focus more on their lifespan versus their startup's lifespan?
Just remember that most founders don't succeed the first time around. And actually, that goes for every single company you start. It could be your third company and it could fail. And so you are in this for the long run. There's a few people who aren't, but I'm not going to speak to that. But most founders are in it for the long run. And so you have to think about not only your health, but actually your reputation in the field, like how your relationships with everybody in the ecosystem. That's important too. I know we're talking about health here, but all of that is speaking to the longevity of you, your career, your personal brand, essentially. And that's all important. You need to last for 50 years of working as a startup founder, not just 6 months.
Yeah. Okay. Well, perfect. And what keeps you going? Like, what is the reason that like you're motivated every day? Like, how do you keep consistently pushing?
Yeah, that's a fun one for me because I'm maybe unusual in that I am a founder simply because it's fun for me. And I didn't talk about this, but I'm obsessed with escape rooms. So I've done over 200 escape rooms around the world.
That's insane. I love that.
Yeah. But I freaking love them. And I think of founding a company as very similar. And hang on with me here. The reason is because escape rooms are they're time-based, so it's like fast. There's urgency. It's fun, obviously, it's play, and you're constantly solving problems, but not just like Sudoku problems. You're not like sitting down and solving problems. Yeah. You're hands-on solving problems, and you're working with a team. You have to very, very quickly figure out how to work with usually a new team and communicate well and so forth. And so that same energy is startup energy to me. And that's why I love it. And I have started a few different companies, of varying levels of success. And it doesn't matter. I could probably fail a dozen times and I'd probably still do it because it's honestly the most fun that I've ever had. So that's what keeps me going. It's because the day-to-day is so interesting for me. I love problem solving and it feels very impactful and purposeful because I also am a healthcare founder. And so healthcare has not been solved. So I'm like, I feel like there's an endless list of problems to solve. And that's very fun for me as a lifetime purpose and goal.
So if you were to have a direct line to your younger self, what would you say? What advice would you give? Just generally.
Oh, wow. I would have focused so much earlier on my mental health. And a lot of the things I'm telling you today, I honestly didn't know myself until rather recently in my life. Like when I was a teenager and in my 20s, dating myself now, but those were the hardest years of my entire life. And it's simply because I didn't understand myself and I didn't understand the importance of mental health during those eras. And I also didn't understand what contributed to my mental health or that lack thereof. So it took me a long time to figure it out. And once I did, everything became easier. Like, yes, I still have bad days. I still don't know the right answer a lot of the time, but my life is so much better. Like I'm having a good time overall. I can't complain. And I just remember it's such a night and day comparison. So if I were to speak to me of 10 to 20 years ago, I would be like, learn yourself better and focus on feeling okay first. Your mental health comes first. Put on your oxygen mask before you do anything. It's not even before you put on somebody else's oxygen mask. It's literally put on your oxygen mask before you like stand up, before you do anything else, because without that, then you just slog through it and it's a horrible experience. And, I did survive through it, but many people don't. So I think that message is so important. I hope that helps many people who are younger today.
Yeah, and I'm sure that would be pretty common theme across kind of everyone that's been entrepreneurship or, with going into the medical field, just understanding yourself. And probably most people, it's a brand new understanding for them as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So.
All right, so I'm going to end it with our final question that we always ask. What gift or piece of advice or book or something of that nature would you be willing to share to any listener here today?
I'm going to create a guide, which will be available at a link, which you can feel free to share however you wish, for founder longevity. So that'll be available, and it will sum up some of the things we spoke about today, as well as some easy next steps that you can do. And it'll be free. Like most of the advice that I'm giving is absolutely free. It's stuff you can implement for free. And I hope it helps provide a framework for you that you can take into a very successful career as an entrepreneur.
Amazing. Thank you. Thank you so much. We really appreciate having you here. I feel like I learned a lot. I hope everyone at home learned a lot. Please check out all of the videos that Hillary will be putting out recently or future. They are amazing. They are very helpful.
Thank you.
And CareCore, it looks like an amazing site, and I'm excited to sign up myself. But just from the bottom of my heart, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. And best of luck. Hang in there, everybody.
Perfect. Great way to put it. Well, this has been our Startupr Founder Series, and we are very excited to continue on down this new healthcare path that we have. Very good within mental health. Everyone needs to pay attention. And as she said, hang in there. Thank you.